Listen to the sound of your own mind. Not the words, the sound, the endless noise, the internal conversation that never stops, the planning and the replaying and the worrying and the rehearsing, the voice that tells you what you should have done and what you should do next and why you're not good enough and why everyone else seems to have figured this out while you're still struggling. You cannot hear it because you are it. You have never stepped outside of it. You have never known what it feels like to be still, not peaceful. Still. The absence of the constant commentary. The silence underneath the noise. You do not know this because you have never been given permission to stop, and no one gave you that permission because no one taught you that it was possible. But there was a time when men knew this, when warriors understood that the battle was not fought on the field, but in the mind, long before the first sword was drawn. They called it by different names depending on the era and the school. Fudoshin, Mushin, Zanshin, the immovable mind, the mind without excess, the remaining awareness. These were not concepts to be studied. They were states to be lived. And the men who lived them did things that seemed impossible to those who did not. One such man was named Takeshi. Not his real name. Names do not matter. What matters is the pattern he lived, because it is the same pattern you are living now. He was brilliant in the way that modern men are brilliant, full of information, full of potential, full of the certainty that understanding something was the same as possessing it. He read the texts. He memorized the techniques. He could explain the philosophy with precision and passion, and none of it helped him when the moment came that demanded everything he thought he had become. Takeshi was 30 years old when he faced his test. He had trained for 12 years under a master named Mori, one of the last teachers who still understood that the sword was merely a tool for the real training, which was the mind. But Takeshi had not truly understood this. He had learned the forms. He had practiced the cuts until his body knew them better than his own name. He had achieved a technical proficiency that impressed observers and satisfied his ego. And he had completely missed the point. The challenge came through a letter written in formal language that made the threat sound like a courtesy. Another swordsman, a man named Kojima, had challenged Takeshi to a duel, not because of anything Takeshi had done. Kojima was old now, 53 years old, and he had heard that Takeshi was considered one of the promising students of Mori's school. He wanted to test the school. He wanted to prove that technical brilliance meant nothing against the kind of stillness that could only come from decades of dedicated practice. He wanted to show that knowing the forms was not the same as being the form. Takeshi accepted. Of course he accepted. His honor demanded it. His ego demanded it. And secretly, in the part of himself he would never admit to, he wanted to prove that he was ready, that he was worthy, that 12 years of training had made him into something more than a student. The night before the duel, Takeshi did what any modern mind would do. He rehearsed. He went through the forms in his mind, visualizing each movement, each possible response. He imagined himself victorious. He imagined the crowd's reaction. He imagined Kojima's face as he realized that this young challenger was beyond his league. He built a mental narrative of triumph and clung to it like a drowning man clings to driftwood. He did not sleep. He could not sleep. The noise in his mind was too loud. The voice that never stopped was telling him that he was about to prove himself, to validate 12 years of work, to become finally the person he had always believed he could be. And in the quiet hours before dawn, when the noise finally faded into exhaustion, Takeshi felt something he had never felt before. The first real glimpse of what he had been avoiding all along. He felt the absence of himself. The place where Takeshi should have been, but was not. All those years of training had built a character, a persona, a self that was constructed of techniques, knowledge, and ego. And when he searched for the center of that self, he found only the hollow space where a real presence should have been. The morning of the duel arrived with the kind of clear cold that makes the world seem sharper, more defined. Takeshi walked to the field where Kojima was waiting, and as he walked, he felt the weight of every expectation he had ever placed upon himself. The master who had taught him, the classmates who had admired him, the future students who would hear about this day, all of it pressing down on him like armor made of stone. Kojima was waiting in an open field, an older man with the kind of stillness that comes from having stopped trying to prove anything decades ago. He was not tall. He was not imposing. He held a wooden sword with the casual ease of someone who had held 10,000 swords before and would hold 10,000 more. His eyes met Takeshi's, and in that moment, Takeshi understood something that 12 years of training had failed to teach him. Kojima was not there. Not in the way that Takeshi was there. Kojima was not thinking about winning or losing. He was not rehearsing victory or fearing defeat. He was simply present, completely, in the only moment that had ever existed. And Takeshi, standing in front of him, was already defeated, not because of any physical advantage Kojima possessed, but because Takeshi was carrying the weight of a future that did not yet exist and a past that no longer mattered, and Kojika was carrying nothing at all. The duel lasted 9 seconds. To Takeshi, it felt like an eternity. Kojima moved with the kind of simplicity that seems impossible until you understand that simplicity is the only thing that remains when everything unnecessary has been removed. There was no dramatic flourish, no powerful strike, no theatrical moment of conflict. Kojima simply stepped forward, and the wooden sword touched Takeshi's chest with the gentle pressure of a finger on a forehead. A child could have deflected it, a distracted child who was not thinking about winning. Takeshi fell to his knees. Not from the impact. There was no impact. He fell because his legs could no longer support the weight of his ego. 12 years of training, thousands of hours of practice, all of it revealed as a house built on sand, beautiful on the surface, empty underneath. Kojima looked down at him with neither pity nor contempt. He said something that Takeshi would remember for the rest of his life. He said, "You are not here. You are somewhere else, fighting someone else, trying to prove something to someone. I am here. I have always been here. And that is why you cannot touch me." He turned and walked away. No victory celebration, no mocking words, just stillness leaving stillness, returning to the place from which it had never truly departed. What happened to Takeshi in the months that followed is the part of the story that matters most to you, because you are Takeshi. Not your name, but your pattern. You have trained in many things without ever truly arriving. You have collected skills without mastering any of them. You have built a self out of potential and potential alone, and you are terrified that if you ever truly commit to becoming something, you will discover that there is nothing underneath the promise. The first thing Takeshi did was return to his master Mori and confess everything. Not the duel, the deeper truth. He confessed that he had spent 12 years learning techniques without ever learning how to be present. He confessed that he had confused knowledge with wisdom, action with presence, achievement with becoming. He confessed that he did not know who he was because he had never stopped moving long enough to find out. Mori listened without interrupting. When Takeshi finished, Mori stood and walked to the window. He stood there for a long time, looking out at nothing visible to Takeshi. Finally, he spoke. "What you experienced on that field was not defeat," he said. "What you experienced was the discovery that you had been fighting a war that existed only in your mind. Kojima did not defeat you. You defeated yourself by giving your attention to something that was not happening. This is the lesson that takes a lifetime to learn and only a moment to understand." From that day, Takeshi began a new training. Not in the sword, not in the forms, in presence itself. And Mori taught him something that he had never taught before, something that he reserved only for students who had reached the point of absolute surrender. The first technique was called Shoshin, the beginner's mind. This was not about being a literal beginner, about pretending to know nothing. It was about approaching each moment as if it were the first and last moment, about seeing what was actually there instead of what the mind assumed was there. Mori gave Takeshi a simple task: to pour tea. Not to pour tea well, not to pour tea correctly, just to pour tea. To be completely present in the act of pouring. To notice the steam and the temperature and the sound of the liquid, to exist entirely in the single motion of the hand. For the first week, Takeshi could not do it. His mind kept intruding. It told him he was doing it wrong. It told him he was wasting time. It told him that tea pouring was not sword training, and this was not why he had come. And each time, Mori would say the same thing: return to the tea. Return to what is actually happening. The future does not exist. The past does not exist. Only this moment, only this pour, only this breath. The second technique was called Mushin no mind. This was not about having no thoughts, about achieving some kind of empty stupidity. It was about the absence of the unnecessary, about the mind operating without the weight of ego and desire. Mori explained that in the moment of true action, the mind must be empty. There is no room for fear when you are being attacked. There is no room for pride when you are executing a technique. There is only the action itself, flowing through you like water through a channel. To train this, Mori did something that seemed cruel at the time. He began to strike Takeshi without warning, not to hurt him, but to break his concentration. A stick would come down on his arm while he was eating. A sharp sound would explode behind him while he was walking. At first, Takeshi flinched every time. His body would jerk, his heart would pound, his mind would flood with adrenaline and fear and anger, and Mori would simply wait for him to settle, then strike again. After months of this, something began to shift. Takeshi started to respond without reacting. When the stick came, his body would move if movement was necessary, but his mind would remain still. When the sound exploded, his attention would note it and release it, returning to whatever he had been doing. He was learning, finally, to be present without being defensive, to be aware without being anxious. The third technique was called Zanshin, remaining awareness. This was the hardest of all because it required what seemed impossible: to be completely in the present moment while also maintaining a broader awareness of the surroundings. Mori explained that this was what Kojima had possessed. He had been fully present in the immediate action while also perceiving everything around him. He had been both here and everywhere, focused and expanded, still and aware. Takeshi began to practice this in small ways. He would walk through a garden and try to notice everything without focusing on anything. He would sit in a room and try to feel the presence of objects at the edge of his vision, sounds at the edge of his hearing, without turning his head. He would engage in conversation while maintaining awareness of his own breath, his own posture, his own internal state. This felt like juggling while walking a tightrope, like trying to hold two contradictory ideas at once. But over time, it stopped feeling like juggling and started feeling like something else. It started feeling like integration, as if the different parts of his awareness had been separate and were now beginning to work together, as if he had been a scattered collection of thoughts and was becoming a unified presence. The fourth technique was called Fudoshin, the immovable mind. This was not about becoming cold or unfeeling. It was about not being moved by things that should not move you. Mori explained that the untrained mind is like a pond that ripples at every disturbance. A harsh word ripples, a challenge ripples, an unexpected change ripples. The trained mind is like the deep ocean. Things happen on the surface, but the depths remain undisturbed. To train this, Mori created situations designed to provoke fear and anger and anxiety. He criticized Takeshi's work publicly. He changed the schedule without explanation. He withheld approval that Takeshi had learned to crave. And at first, Takeshi reacted every time. His face would flush, his voice would tighten, his hands would shake, And Mori would say nothing, waiting for the ripple to pass, waiting for Takeshi to remember that he had a choice in how he responded. There came a day when Mori criticized Takeshi in front of other students, using words that would have caused Takeshi to respond with rage in the past. But Takeshi felt something different. He felt the criticism land on him like rain on stone. He felt it, acknowledged it, and let it pass through him without disturbing anything underneath. He did not respond with anger. He did not respond with submission. He simply listened and continued to be himself. Mori stopped speaking. He looked at Takeshi with an expression that Takeshi had never seen on his face before. Something like recognition. Something like respect. He nodded once, a small motion, and returned to his teaching. That night, Mori spoke to Takeshi alone. He said, "You have learned what most men never learn in a lifetime. You have learned that you are not your thoughts. You are not your reactions. You are not the story you tell about yourself. You are the awareness that observes all of these things, and that awareness cannot be disturbed by anything that it observes. This is what Kojima knew. This is what the old masters knew. This is what the samurai discovered in their search for the perfect sword stroke. That the sword is nothing, the hand is nothing, the mind is everything." Takeshi asked the question that you are asking yourself. What do I do with this? How do I live? How do I function in a world that seems designed to distract and provoke and consume? Mori smiled, which was rare. He said, "You function. You live. You do what needs to be done without believing that you are doing it. You respond to situations without believing that you are your responses. You become successful or you fail, and neither event disturbs the center of what you are. This does not mean you stop caring. It means you care without being consumed. You act without being possessed. You engage without being destroyed." He added one more thing. The final lesson. The mind that is controlled is not the mind that is subdued. It is the mind that is free. You are not learning to control yourself. You are learning to stop controlling yourself. You are learning to stop fighting against what you are and start being what you are. Takeshi spent the next 20 years practicing what Mori had taught him. He did not become famous. He did not seek out Kojima for a rematch. He did not use his training to achieve worldly success in the way that the modern mind measures success. He simply became present. In every action, every interaction, every moment of existence, he was there, completely there, as Kojima had been there on that morning in the field. And when he died at the age of 71, those who were with him said that his final breath was like his first breath, complete, unhurried, unaccompanied by fear or longing or regret. He simply ended as he had been learning to end everything, with presence. Modern science has a name for what Takeshi discovered in his years of training. It calls it attention control, the ability to direct focus deliberately rather than having it captured compulsively by whatever stimulus is most immediate. Neuroscience has discovered that the untrained mind spends most of its time in what is called the default mode network, a state of self-referential thought where the mind endlessly replays the past and rehearses the future without ever arriving in the present moment. This network is associated with anxiety, with rumination, with the kind of chronic dissatisfaction that seems to be the default condition of modern human existence. The trained mind, the mind that has learned to be present, shows a different pattern. The default mode network quiets. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for executive function and conscious choice, becomes more active. The body enters what researchers call flow states more easily, moments of complete absorption where action and awareness merge and time seems to disappear. The stress response system, which evolved to handle occasional physical threats, stops being activated by psychological threats that do not actually exist. But these are just modern words for what the old masters understood without brain scans. They understood that the mind that is scattered is weak. They understood that the mind that is present is strong. They understood that training the mind was not an optional supplement to training the body, but was itself the entire purpose of any physical training. The question you are asking now is, how do I do this? What is the technique? What is the method? How long will it take? And these questions themselves are the problem. They are the mind trying to capture presence as if it were another skill to be acquired, another achievement to be collected. You cannot do presence. You can only allow it. You cannot achieve it. You can only stop preventing it. The practice, if it can be called that, is this. Choose one thing each day and do it completely. Not well, completely. Pour tea completely. Walk completely. Listen completely. Breathe completely. When the mind wanders, notice that it has wandered and return. Do not punish yourself. Do not congratulate yourself. Simply return. This is Shoshin, the beginner's mind. Each moment a new moment. Each action a new action, the past and future irrelevant. Let the mind be empty of the unnecessary. When you notice yourself planning, worrying, rehearsing, judging, gently release these thoughts and return to what is actually happening. This is Mushin, no mind. Not stupidity, but clarity. Not absence, but presence. Maintain awareness while you act. Feel the edges of your experience while you focus on the center. Notice the surroundings while you engage with the task. This is Zanshin, remaining awareness, expanded attention that does not contract into obsession. Do not be moved by the provocations of the world. When criticism comes, let it land and pass through. When success comes, let it land and pass through. When failure comes, let it land and pass through. This is Fudoshin, immovable mind, not coldness but depth, not indifference but stability. None of this will feel like progress at first. The mind will resist. It will try to make this into another project, another optimization, another way to prove itself. You must resist the resistance. You must see the irony of the mind trying to achieve non-attachment, trying to control itself into surrender. There is a final truth that I must tell you, because truth is what this channel exists to provide. The practice never ends. Takeshi practiced for 40 years, and at the end, he was still practicing. Because presence is not a destination, but a direction. There is no arrival. There is only the walking. There is no moment when you finally become present forever. There are only moments of presence, scattered through a life that is mostly distraction and forgetting. The difference between Takeshi and most men was not that he achieved some permanent state of enlightenment. It was that he remembered more often. He returned more quickly. He caught himself sooner. And over decades, these small differences accumulated into a fundamentally different way of being. You will not become this in a week. You will not become this in a month. You will probably not become this in a year. This is not a technique that gives quick results. It is a transformation that takes the rest of your life. And this is exactly why most people will never do it. They want results, not transformation. They want to learn, not to become. They want to do, not to be. But you are not most people. You watched this video. You read these words. Something in you is ready to stop being the person who starts 17 things and finishes none. Something in you is ready to stop being the person whose mind is never under their own control. Something in you is ready to become the person who is present, who is still, who is free. Here is what I am not going to do. I am not going to give you a motivational closing. I am not going to tell you that you have potential. I am not going to tell you that you can do anything you set your mind to. These are lies that have kept you weak. They give you feelings that fade and leave you empty. Here is what I am going to tell you instead. You are alone with yourself. You always were. You always will be. No one is coming to save you from your own mind. No app will fix your attention. No book will make you present. No video will transform you. Only you can transform you, and you can only do it through the accumulated weight of 1,000 small choices made alone, in silence, when no one is watching. You must choose, not whether to begin. Beginning is easy. You must choose whether to continue, whether to persist, whether to return again and again and again to the practice that offers no rewards and promises no results. Whether to become someone who can look at their own mind and see it clearly, without flinching, without hiding, without pretending. Takeshi had a moment of truth on a field in Japan 200 years ago when an old man showed him that everything he had built was empty. That moment broke him, and from the breaking came the rebuilding. You will have your moment. It may come as a failure, a loss, a humiliation. It may come as a quiet realization on an ordinary morning. It may not come at all, and you will have to create it through the sheer force of your own willingness to see clearly. Whatever form it takes, the moment is the same. The moment when you realize that you have been fighting a war that exists only in your mind, and that the only way to win is to stop fighting and start being. I will not tell you to subscribe. I will not tell you to like. I will not tell you that this video helped you. It did not help you. Information does not help you. Only action helps you. Only presence helps you. Only the choice you make right now to stop reading and start being. The voice in your mind has not stopped. It never stops. But now you know that you are not the voice. You are the awareness that hears it, and that awareness cannot be anxious. It cannot be distracted. It cannot be lost. It can only remember. The rest is up to you.